and you are favorite political analyst, the political analyst of he said, she said. I'm claiming them. She like, I am. Yeah, some people have. Oh, what is her name? Why did I have Brazil? Donna Brazil. Some people have. I don't know. Don Lemon. Who is a political analyst?
Michael Boykin,
Yeah. See, I don't even
Donna
know them all because I
Brazil.
only have David C. That's the only one I listen to that I enjoy listening to on a regular basis, and I'm very excited to have you here with me
Thank
today.
you for having me back.
So, you guys, thing I can say about David is that, and I will bring out Tiba Buchanan as well, the guys of Humanity and the Headlines, is that they really know how to break down something where you go, oh, I didn't think of it that way, and they really know how to break it down where you understand it. And sometimes I'm just gonna speak for myself. Something will happen, and I go, "What? What does that mean to me? Yeah, break that down. Why do I care? Why do I?" And he usually knows how to put it all in a perspective in a way that even a fifth grader can understand. People like me. So I'm very said is brought to you by Allstate. Whether you need auto, home, or life insurance, I'd love for you to give Sal a call and get a price quote. Tell him I sent you. Tell him Wanda B said, I need a new rate on my car and can I get a quote? The number to give him a call, though, is 708-599-5100. Let me check, make sure I'm saying it right. Beautiful sign right here. 708-599-00. Give Sal a call. Tell him I sent you and get a price quote. So we're going to jump right in. I'm not going to do a whole lot of the other stuff talking about because I've really been curious. I called David up and said, David, I need to know what's happening with this impeachment. And I know he knows all. So let's start off by, because last time they were talking impeachment, it was Russia. So I'm like, what? Where Ukraine come in? When did he start calling them for stuff? So explain to us,
Well, number
please.
one, if you hate Trump, then you really want to pay attention to what's going on right now. If you don't, I don't want, and perhaps hate is the wrong word, Trump. There's nothing about the Trump administration that I like or that I don't think they brought any value. They're destroying the fabric of this country. So if you don't like Trump, if every time he comes on the television or you hear his name or whatever and you roll your eyes, you need to be paying attention right now.
Well, so this is why I don't. And maybe this is another reason what you could explain. He's like Teflon Trump. I mean, he can do pretty much anything and nothing ever happens to him, which makes me think, okay, you're going to impeach Trump. Here we go. How will he get out of this?
Well, there's a really important distinction that we need to remember when we're talking about impeachment. Impeachment just means you're being brought up on charges. Being convicted is when you get removed from office. So if Trump gets impeached, he will be the third president who has been impeached. We've never had a president who was actually convicted and removed from office. Most people think impeachment means you're going to get kicked out.
I thought you couldn't even impeach when they're in office. Is that true or not
No,
true?
that's not correct. There have been some of Trump's attorneys have been saying that you can't even investigate a sitting president. You might be thinking of what happened during the Robert Mueller whole thing when he was investigating him, where there was a memo that was written in the Justice Department that says you can't indict a sitting president.
Okay.
So that's something separate. In the Constitution, that's one of the two legal ways that a president can be removed. So impeachment actually, again, but people think that if you impeach a president, that means he gets kicked out. You can be impeached, but if you're not convicted, then you won't get kicked out. And you'll
And
still
you
be
could be
president.
impeached and stay in office?
Right. Bill Clinton was impeached.
Oh,
Bill
okay.
Clinton was impeached, and then he was impeached by the House, and then the Senate, they have to vote. They have to get 67 votes in the Senate. Think of impeachment like that's when you get arrested and you get charged. So if you go out and you rob a bank and then you get arrested and they charge you with bank robbery, being charged is impeachment. But when you actually go to trial, if the jury finds you guilty and they send you to jail, that's what the Senate does. 67 senators have to vote in the affirmative and say, we agree that the president is guilty of having committed this crime that they were charged of. And then if 67 senators vote to kick you out, that would be like the jury saying you're found guilty. Just like you can be charged of a crime, but just because you're charged doesn't mean you're automatically guilty. You still have to go through a process. And then after you go through that process, you can either be acquitted or found guilty. And that's the part that has never happened to a president, is that the Senate has never actually convicted a president of being found guilty and then kicking them out of office.
And you're saying never.
That's never happened. There have been two presidents who have been impeached. That's Clinton and Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson, you got to go back to the 1800s. Richard Nixon, he was about to be impeached, and the Republicans went to him and said, "Hey, if we impeach you, if you get impeached, we're going to convict you." So Richard Nixon resigned before the impeachment trial even started. So those are the three examples that we have of presidents. But Andrew Jackson and Bill Clinton were both impeached, but they weren't removed from office because they weren't convicted by the Senate.
Okay. So Ukraine. He's made a phone call, and some whistleblower came out, and
isn't it crazy that in all of the countries of the world, a little West Eastern European country like Ukraine would be the one that we'd be talking about? That's crazy. But basically, what happened is Ukraine. Donald Trump, a whistleblower, called or accused Donald Trump of having a phone call with the president of Ukraine, and while he was on this, he told the president of Ukraine, "Hey, I know the United States had already voted to give Ukraine three." This is the big context. When you think of Ukraine, think of Russia, because Russia, part of Ukraine, when you go back to Crimea and you're talking about Russia, and they invaded and they took over this port called Crimea, it was part of Ukraine. So that's the connection, is that you think of the United States and Russia and you. So the United States was going to give almost $400 million of aid to Ukraine to defend themselves militarily against Russia. The United States Congress, they voted to allocate this money, and they said, "Hey, we're going to give this money to Ukraine to defend themselves." Now, right away, Trump has always been on the side of Russia. That's the other thing we can't figure out, is why Trump loves Russia so much. So the Congress, to kind of go and to kind of jump in Trump's face, said, "Hey, we're not on Russia's side. We want Ukraine to defend themselves." So right as the money was released, Donald Trump calls up the new president of Ukraine and says, "Hey, I know you guys have been having trouble over there, and we're going to give you this money. By the way, do me a favor. Find out what's going on with this corruption that involves Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden." Okay, so now you got to go back a few years when Obama and Vice President Biden were still in office. Well, when they were still in office, Vice President Joe Biden's son Hunter Biden was working for a private company in the Ukraine. At the same time, the equivalent of the Attorney General in Ukraine, he was being charged with all of this. He was being charged of being corrupt. So uh, the European Union, the government of Ukraine, the United States, all of these Western companies got together and said, "Hey, this guy over here who's your Attorney General, we want him fired." And Biden told him, "Hey, we're about to give you $1 billion. If you want this $1 billion, then you got to fire this prosecutor." So now that brings up this one word you're going to continue to hear the Republicans talk about: quid pro quo.
one hand washes another.
Right. It literally means it's Latin, and it literally means something for something. So the Republicans are saying, "Hey, there's no quid pro quo here. All the president said was, hey, you want our money, then you got to investigate corruption." But then at the same time, they're saying that Joe Biden told the Ukrainian government that we're only going to give you this $1 billion if you fire this prosecutor. And they're saying the reason that Joe Biden did that was because the prosecutor was going to be investigating his son for corruption. So the Republicans are trying to muddy the waters. They're trying to say, "Hey, you can't go after Trump for doing this because Joe Biden did the same thing." But here's the thing: a quid pro quo is not necessarily bad. If you tell me, "Hey, David, I want you to come on my show today, and if you come on my show today, I'll tutor your daughter," that's a quid pro quo. That just means that in exchange for me coming on he said, she said, that you're going to tutor my daughter. So that's not bad. But if if I just got arrested for something, and you know the police officer who arrested me, and I say to you, hey, I'll come on your show if you call up this guy and have him throw away the evidence that can convict me of this thing that I just got arrested for. Now that quid pro quo is wrong. And that's the difference. When Joe Biden went to Ukraine and said, hey, we're only going to give you this money if you fire this prosecutor, all of the Western world was saying the same thing, and they were saying, "Hey, you're out here. You got this guy who's out here committed. It's guilty of corruption and malfeasance. We're not going to give money unless you get rid of him." So Joe Biden wasn't personally benefiting from that quid pro quo. Donald Trump was saying, we'll give you this money if you investigate Joe Biden, because he believes Joe Biden is going to be the Democratic nominee for president. So he wanted to get some dirt on Joe Biden. And the reason why it's illegal is because he was using his capacity as president in a quid pro quo to benefit himself personally, in terms of, hey, when Joe Biden gets the Democratic nomination, I'm gonna have all this dirt that I can dump out there, and he used his presidency to get that information. That's what makes it illegal.
So why, if Trump is willing to do this with Ukraine, should we not believe he did this with Russia?
That's kind of the point. But this whole thing, this whole quid pro quo with Ukraine is easier to understand. It's kind of like Earl brought up before the show started about when who'd you say
Al
Al
Capone.
Capone. Al Capone was, was a boot. He was the 1920s version of, he was selling alcohol illegally, and he was having people murdered, and he was doing all this stuff, but they could never really connect it directly to him because he always had somebody who would fall on their sword and say, oh, I'm the one who did it, or I'm guilty. So eventually they were able to convict him of tax evasion. So, but that's something that everybody understands, that, oh, I pay my taxes, you need to pay your taxes. So that's part of the other reason why I'm able to convict him, because it was something easy to understand, and most people can draw that connection, and it was easier to prove. Same thing with Donald Trump. When you start talking about he was in bed with Russia and that they were using Facebook to try and convince people not to vote by using these kind of ads, and the story got really circuitous and most people couldn't follow it. So by just coming forward and just saying, hey, here's the phone call. He called up the president of Ukraine, told him, I'm only going to give you this money if you give me this dirt on Biden. That's something and that's basically that's the story. That's it. That's something very easy that most people can understand.
And so it came up that Trump may be using this, uh, is it a phone line or email that you're not supposed to use phone calls, and maybe
Right.
it got leaked that way.
Well, what I think what you're referring to is the actual computer server that they stored the information on. I think that's
Yes,
what you might be
yes.
talking about. So there are three different levels of security that they use to store information. There's one archive that any communication that a president conducts, they're supposed to save that information as a simple matter of record keeping. Just like we're doing this show today, and we're broadcasting it on Facebook, so that this show is going to be preserved forever somewhere digitally. So when you're, within the presidency, you're supposed to archive all of your communication, and that's just something that just stays on a server that can be accessed through the internet, or can be easily accessed. Then you go up one step and you have information that's secret or confidential but not secret. So that's when you start classifying information that can't be available to the
Only
open
certain
public.
people have
Only certain
access to.
people have access to the information. Then you have classified or secret information that goes on a separate server that doesn't have a internet access. You need a password to get into this computer to access any of the information, and it's a standalone computer. That computer system is supposed to be for national security. Like when the Obama administration had the whole thing to go kill Osama bin Laden, that information was stored on that computer. So that's the kind of information that went there. Well, the whistleblower asserts that not only this information about Ukraine, but other conversations that Trump has had with Russia and with Saudi Arabia that are not national security, are being stored on this computer because they're embarrassed about it. Now, the one question I have about this, and the one thing I can never understand is, if it's information that you don't want anybody to find out, why are you typing it up
in the
and
first
and
place.
saving it on a computer?
Anywhere.
Right. Just don't have a record of the conversation. I mean, that's I mean, at the end of the day, when you go back to Richard Nixon and how he was almost impeached, he gave this transcript of, because he had this recording system that recorded all of his phone calls. He gave a transcript to Congress, but then he just erased the parts of the information that he didn't want them to know. But then when they got the actual recordings, audio tapes, they said, "Hey, this information is missing. You didn't put this in the," and that's eventually what made him resign. But if he had just destroyed the tapes or never recorded the calls in the first place, there would have been no record, and he would probably never have been forced to resign. So that's the only thing that makes sense to me is, why Trump wouldn't just say, "Hey, don't record this phone call," which I'm sure he's done. I mean, again, if he recorded this phone call, he thought he could get away with it. So what else, to your point earlier, what else is he doing that's out there that we just haven't found out about? The only reason we know about this is because we had a whistleblower that came forward and put him on blast.
Any guesses of the whistleblower?
We don't know who the whistleblower is. All we know is that the whistleblower is a high level person in the intelligence community, because the person had proximity to people within the White House who came and told the whistleblower, "Hey, Trump did ABC." So we know that it's a high level person. It's not some person, working out in the Chicago office making $40,000 a year sitting in a cubicle. This is somebody who's high up, who would have access to the people around Trump, that they felt comfortable enough sharing this information with this person because they thought this person could do something about it. So that, we can kind of narrow down who the person would be based on their proximity. But, they've been very careful when they talk about it in the media to say he or she. So,
So it's not Melania.
it's not Melania.
I don't think Melania could get to the
I don't think
information
I
to
don't
be
think
the
Melania
whistleblower.
I don't think Melania cares. When she wore "I don't care" or whatever, and that's what she was really talking about. I don't care nothing
I
about
don't
what
care.
my husband
I'm
is
riding
doing.
this
I
out.
don't care. She gets a nice little chunk of change if he kicks it to the curb, so she doesn't
So, she doesn't care about saving the world or right or
No,
wrong of
not
the
at all. And I hate
country.
her. I'm not a big fan of hers either. I hate when you hear people get on television and say how beautiful she is. I don't
No,
no, I don't get it. I don't get it. I've never been a fan of Eastern European
no. But he
whatever.
is, obviously.
Oh
That's
yeah,
his
oh
thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, you really, and thank you very much, because now I truly understand. So why now? Like, why when the well, I think you explained that already. Then that one reason why they're going with the Ukraine versus the Russia thing is that it could be traced.
Well, again, let's like, for those of us who listen, let's make this, like, let's use a really easy example to make people understand this. R. Kelly. R. Kelly been messing around with 15-year-old girls or girls underage forever. For at least, I remember when R. Kelly is a few years older, is like, I think he's a few years older than me. But I'm saying that to say that I remember when I was in high school that there were rumors of girls who would go to an R. Kelly concert and then he would hook up with underage girls, in Chicago. That's always been a known rumor in Chicago. So why did it take 20 plus years for R. Kelly to finally be charged and for the charges to be taken seriously? It just, the information just got to the point where there was so much information out there, and they finally had a easy way to kind of get to him. And that's why, again, people oftentimes, they don't get caught when they do something the first or second time.
It's
you
when they
know
get sloppy and
is
think
when
they
they
can
get
get away
sloppy. Right,
get
right,
away with it.
right, right, right.
So, Toussaint Werner said that we wouldn't have to impeach anybody if white people let go of whiteness, or if the Democratic Party could create a real candidate. It's a marketing plot to secure a Democratic nominee. That's it. That's all.
That's an interesting point. I would certainly agree with him that I don't agree that that impeachment is an important part of our judicial system. Going back to the whole thing about a president not being indicted. The And again, that's not in the Constitution. But the reasoning behind saying that you don't want to indict a sitting president is because, let's say Donald Trump went out there and he shot somebody on Fifth Avenue. You remember he said I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and I wouldn't even get convicted. So Donald Trump goes to shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue. He gets arrested, he gets convicted, and now he gets sentenced for 20 years in jail. He's still the president. So paradoxically, he could literally be sitting in jail convicted of murder and still be the commander in chief. So you have to have a process to remove him from office. And the reason that the bar is set so high in terms of 67 senators having to convict him is so that because you don't want the bar to be so low that a president can just be removed for any little thing. It's very difficult and highly improbable that you would get 67 senators to agree on anything, let alone the removal of the president from office. So impeachment does play a part. I don't know that I would be so conspiratorial as to think that it's deeper, that it's that deep. It really just comes down to Trump during the first 2 years, he had a Republican majority in the Congress, in the House and in the Senate. The people responded. They put the Democrats in charge of the House. Now we're finally at the point where he can be impeached and held accountable, but it's still up to the Senate to convict him. So again, I don't know that we want to have a very low bar to remove a president. I mean, because again, think about it. If all you needed was 51 votes to remove a president for anything, Obama would have been impeached for his tan suit, or for any number of things that they attacked him about that didn't rise to the level of needing to be removed from office.
So he's saying it's not based on the information, it's based on sensationalism.
No, in this particular case, Donald Trump broke the law. He used his presidency to coerce another president of another country to give him opposition research on who he thinks is going to be the Democratic nominee for president, who's going to potentially run against him. Now, the irony is that Joe Biden might not get the Democratic nomination.
Right.
That would be the ultimate irony, is that Trump gets impeached and then Elizabeth Warren winds up being the Democratic nominee. That would be that would be the ultimate. But again, he broke the law when he did that, because he was trying to use his presidency to personally gain from what the information that he was trying to get from Ukraine. That's what makes it illegal, and that's what makes it an abuse of power, and that's why the Democrats are moving forward with impeachment.
And you don't think it's anything that's timely, that it's before the election, that it does create some, it may upset some Trump supporters, probably not the others, but that some may flip and say, you know what, I can't put him back in office. That it is.
I don't think this. If you were a supporter of Trump, then this one incident is not going to make you flip. And if you weren't a supporter of Trump, this one incident isn't going to be the one incident that makes you think the Democrats went too far and now you're going to support Trump. I certainly think that there's a lot of apathy out there, and that there will be some people who will just be ground down by the constant drip, 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 and they'll just remove themselves, just kind of withdraw from the entire process. But again, this is something, like I said, pretty simple. He broke the law. It's in black and white. He put out the transcript. The whistleblower is going to be testifying this week before Congress. This is pretty cut and dry. And if he can't be impeached for this, then that means that you're basically telling him he can get away with anything. And just for the rule of law, we can't allow for us to be communicating to this and future presidents that the president is above the law.
But I think something Tucson is saying, and I think too, we have ignored him breaking the law many times. So why now? It does seem like it's the Democratic Party that is. But let me read exactly, because that was mine actually. Trump has been breaking the law, but it wasn't an election cycle. Also, if we were being fair, there is no proof that he broke the law in this instance.
But there is proof. That's the whole point, that we have the transcript of, we have the memo of the call. People have been calling it a transcript. We have a memo of the call. We have in the memo of the call, Trump says to the president of Ukraine, "Hey, I'm about to." I mean, again, it would be like if you and I are sitting here and you say to me, I say to you, Wanda, oh man, loan me $20. I really need $20 right now. And then you say, sure, no problem. I sure wish I had a babysitter this afternoon. As you're reaching into your wallet for the $20, you're saying, everybody listening to that conversation would understand that what you're saying is you need a babysitter in exchange for this $20. So when you follow the chronology of the memo, they're talking, the president of Ukraine is saying to President Trump, oh man, thank you for giving us this money. We really need your help because we really want to get Russia out of our borders. And Trump says, no problem. By the way, I need a favor. Could you dig up some information, find out what's going on? Again, so when you follow the chronology of the conversation and you look at it objectively, it's very, very obvious what Trump meant. And when you couple that with the fact that he had already stopped the dispersal of the money was supposed to go over there, and Trump withheld it until they had this conversation. Then when it broke and it got out into the open and everybody found out, now everybody knew what happened in this conversation, then all of a sudden he immediately released the funds. So again, if you follow the chronology of everything that happens, it's fairly obvious what he did and why he did it.
But the timing of Nancy Pelosi acting on impeaching him, uh, it seems like it could be, she could have overlooked this like anything else he does, or
I don't think
no?
so. I don't think so. I mean, because as I mean, as of right now, there are 235 Democrats in the House, and 225 of them have come out in support of an impeachment. You only need 218 to have a majority. And in the last polls that have been taken in the last 48 hours, now 55% of the American people are in favor of beginning impeachment proceedings. You didn't have those numbers before. During the Mueller investigation, you had a plurality of no more than 37% of the American people who wanted to see Trump impeached, and you couldn't get a majority of Democrats in the House to support impeachment. So the numbers have changed. All of the circumstances have changed. Sure, Nancy Pelosi could come out and say, yeah, we're still not going to do it, but with almost 100% of the Democrats now in favor of impeachment, and like I said, now a majority of Americans in favor of impeachment, it'd be pretty difficult for her not to at least begin the impeachment investigation.
Toussaint said it's not about supporters, it's about the fans. He offered to release it himself, but because he knew he could skate past this. But that's the entire point, that Trump, that's not Trump breaking the law, that's subjective.
Okay.
If I mentioned I need a babysitter, you can respond however you want if I be absolved. And it seems like then you could go, that's not what I meant with the $20. I didn't mean that. I meant that he
correct. But again, I respectfully disagree with Toussaint. This is not a matter of being subjective, because President Trump held the money back. President Trump had the conversation and told the president of Ukraine, do me a favor, right after they got done discussing the actual money. He said, hey, do me a favor. I need you to dig up some dirt. And again, let's even take the quid pro quo out of it. Let's even take that out of it for the sake of the argument. Let's say that I agree with Toussaint. It's still illegal for a president to get opposition research from a foreign country on his opponent. You're using information that you got from a foreign country to use in a U.S. election. That's against the law. So even if the quid pro quo part of it didn't exist, that's the illegality. So because think about this. Donald Trump has access to the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, the DOJ. He has access. The United States intelligence community is revered throughout the world as being the best information gathering apparatus in the world. if that's the information that you wanted, why not go to the FBI, the DOJ, the CIA, the State Department? Why not go internally? The reason that he didn't go internally is because he knew if he went internally, someone would say, you can't use us. We can't go over there. We can't provide opposition research against Joe Biden so that you can use it against him in a political runoff for president. So he didn't go to his people. He went outside of his people. Then he sent uh, uh, Giuliani, I always call him Giuliani, but then he sent, ex-mayor of New York, Rudy Giuliani over there to get the information, to collect the information from. So he was using all of these non-official back channels. Why? Because he knew what he was doing was wrong. Or else he would have just picked up the phone and called the FBI or just called the CIA, but he didn't do that. So, again, so you have to ask yourself, why is the president of the United States going to Ukraine with a new president who needs the $400 million in aid that you're about to send them to defend themselves against Russia, and you're sending Giuliani over there as opposed to going to your intelligence community? Why is he's going through all of these channels? He's going to all this extent to go outside of official channels to gather this information. Why is he doing that? If he knows that what he's doing is, if there's no problem with it and it's legal, when he could just go to pick up the phone and call the FBI or any one of 17 intelligence agencies in the United States.
Also, if he knows he's done it before and it works, so
correct, that's correct. He's already, again, he's already done this, and them violating that secret server and putting information on that. Again, the whistleblower has intimated that he's done this with Russia and with Saudi Arabia. So I think by the time this is all said and done, we'll have some other information that will come out. But again, you've got the quid pro quo. But even if you say that the quid pro quo is kind of nebulous and it's not, you can't really put your finger on it, still the president going to a foreign country to get opposition research on his would-be Democratic the Democratic nominee running against him for president, that's against the law.
And that they have proof of from the memos.
Right. I mean, he's saying very plainly in the memo, I need you to find out what's going on Joe Biden's son Hunter when he was working over there. And then again, the hypocrisy of the Republicans. They're saying that Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, was working in the Ukraine at a job where he was making $50,000 a month. So he's making $600,000 a year. And they're saying that's so much money. I mean, I heard Jim Jordan was saying he's getting $50,000 a month. Most of my constituents in Ohio, they don't make $50,000 a year. But the same people who are saying that aren't bringing up that Ivanka Trump, Donald Trump's daughter, has received scores of Chinese patents to do business in China since he became president. Nobody's saying anything about that. Nobody's bringing up Eric and Donald Trump Jr. going all around the world, getting access to all of this business that they didn't have access to, that people are giving them access to. Why? Because their father is president. So all of us know that if you are any person of note, that you can hook up the people around you. If your daughter came to you tomorrow and said, Mom, I want to do a radio show, you wouldn't tell her to go down to VON and put an application in. You would say, oh, I got you, no problem. You come on in, So let's not be naive that the child of a sitting president or vice president is going to have access based on the fact that their parent is a person of note or a person of power. That's just the way things work. But if you're going to go after Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden for having this gig in the Ukraine, then certainly you got to go after Donald Trump's kids. But they're not doing that. So again, those are their three main points, and all three of them are not credible.
So you think this timing is good?
I think this timing is excellent, because if they sit around, if they let it drag, that's part of the other reason too that the Mueller investigation wasn't as effective, because they just let it dribble out little by little by little, and they were trying to do the whole death of 1,000 cuts, and people stopped paying attention. But this has been happening, within a week. We've gotten a lot of information from this whistleblower about the accusations against Trump, and because people can understand it, you've seen polling turn from you've seen the polling go from 13% in favor of impeaching, or at least investigating and starting the impeachment proceedings against Trump, and that's happened within a week.
Toussaint said he feels like it's a witch hunt. He said, though, great analogies. He's held all his businesses since his election, which is a definite conflict of interest, and we've accepted that for the duration of his term. That kind of proves the point of sensationalism.
Not at all. Donald, when Jimmy Carter ran for president and he became president in 1976, Jimmy Carter owned a peanut farm. They made him sell his peanut farm before he actually became president when he won the election in 1976 because of the emoluments clause. They said that's a violation of the emoluments clause. And I don't know what they thought he was going to do. He was going to make Payday buy all the peanuts from him to make their candy bars or something, or he was going to get corner of the market in elephant treats or something. But again, the Republicans the Congress made Jimmy Carter sell his peanut farm. When President Obama, go back and research this, when President Obama wrote a book while he was running for president, when he actually won, they told him he couldn't keep the proceeds from the sale from his book starting from the day that he became president, because they were saying it was an emolument clause violation, that he was profiting from the presidency from the sale of his book. So President Obama said, okay, no problem. I don't want this to be an issue. I don't want to be accused of impropriety. So I'll donate all of the proceeds from the sale of my book because I don't want there to even be an appearance of impropriety. Donald Trump is the first president who has said, I'm not doing that, and you all can't make me do it. And nobody made him do it because the Republicans were in charge of both the House and the Senate for the first 2 years that he was president.
Well, doesn't that prove, though, Toussaint's point, though, that we've accepted it for
No, we
most
haven't.
of,
No,
we just haven't been able to do anything about it.
Right. It was Donald Trump's party who was in charge of Congress, and all of the Republicans have shown themselves to be sycophants as it pertains to Donald Trump. They haven't investigated him for anything. So you can't say that, that the Republicans didn't investigate him. So by virtue of the fact that the Republicans didn't investigate him, that means he didn't do anything. The Democrats have been yelling about the emoluments clause violations since the day that he became president, but they couldn't do anything about it. And that was something else that they were trying to impeach him for. But again, most people don't quite understand that Donald Trump owns this hotel in Washington, D.C., and people have tried to sue for it, but they haven't been able to get all of the people who have tried to bring a case against Donald Trump for an emoluments clause violation of having his hotel in Washington, D.C. All of those cases have been dismissed because all of the people who have sued, the courts have said, didn't have standing. There hasn't been another hotel who has come out and said, hey, I've lost business since Donald Trump became president because everybody is going and they're staying at his hotel. That's the kind of person that would have standing that would need to sue the president for an emoluments clause violation. But again, there are plenty of things that he's done wrong that have been illegal, but we've just gotten to the point since the election of 2018 that you could actually hold him accountable and do something about it.
So when he mentions, or Toussaint mentions, the sensationalism, we remember Hillary Clinton and the emails. And
I don't know, there was an article that came out in the last 24 hours that Donald Trump has ordered a reinvestigation of the people who worked for Hillary Clinton when she was at the State Department to come forward with their emails.
So that did create so much sensationalism during that campaign that it did affect Hillary Clinton. And so what Toussaint was mentioning, that one reason the Democrats may be doing this is just for the hype, that people will get caught up in this.
Well, I think the fact that we're having this conversation shows the damage that Donald Trump has done to our political discourse. The fact that Donald Trump has done a masterful job of conflating opinion and fact. And that's what we're doing right now. We're having a conversation, and Toussaint and people out there who espouse his point of view are saying, he didn't really do anything wrong. I mean, what all he did? No, what he did was illegal. Now, the fact that it might have a sensationalist tinge to it is separate. You can't even bring up the timing because the call happened July 24th. this year. So the timing is the Democrats are not trying to bring it up in the shadow of a
Waiting
presidential
till
election.
next year and
Right,
bringing it
right,
up.
you're right, exactly. If this was an October surprise next year, then Toussaint would be 100% right. And I would completely agree with him that the Democrats were using this for sensationalism and that they were trying to color the election. But this call with the president of Ukraine happened July 24th of this year. It's barely 60 days. We've already gotten to the point where they're moving forward with impeachment proceedings. So I don't think that you can accuse the Democrats of trying to time this to hurt Donald Trump. They came forward with the information as soon as they were made aware of it by the whistleblower, and they are moving forward with all expediency. I don't know. I don't know what else you would want them to do in the face of such incontrovertible evidence of having broken the law.
Now, there's been news of or reported or said that in the midst of all this, Donald Trump has been throwing Mike Pence under the bus, and I'm like, huh?
Well,
Explain that for
he
me.
did have he did have a he'd had a news. He was speaking in front of some people the other day, and I can't remember the venue, but he was speaking in front of some people the other day because initially when this came out, he said he kept saying this call was perfect. This was a perfect call, which I don't even know what that means, but this call was perfect. And he said, and he just kind of said parenthetically, and Mike Pence had a couple of calls with him, and you can look at his calls too. I don't think there's anything to look at because I'm sure his calls were fine too, but Mike Pence had some calls too if you want to look at those. So again, Donald Trump is very surreptitiously trying to rope in some additional people to try and deflect the heat that's on him. But he knows that this is a wrap. Yeah, I mean, he doesn't want to go down in history regardless as to whether or not he's convicted. He doesn't want to go down in history with the mark of being the third impeached president. So he's going to be impeached. And again, for the people out there who are saying, "Oh, you don't want to impeach Trump because then you're going to get the people on his side all fired up." He already has a high 80% approval with Republicans. There's nothing that you can do that can hype his supporters up any more than they already are. So that's a specious argument, and we should not be allowing that should not be the metric of whether or not we impeach a president. The metric for whether or not we impeach a president is if he committed a crime.
And you say well, we have proof that he has with
The
the
evidence
memos.
says he
The
has.
evidence says that he has, and so that all makes sense. I get it now. Thank you very much. I knew you'd catch me up on this topic, and
It's like I said, it's one of those stories that it bends and goes back and forth. But again, don't allow the commentators to kind of pull you away from the facts. It's just as black and white as Donald Trump broke the law. He tried to use his presidency to beguile, coerce, whatever word you want to use, the president of the Ukraine into giving him dirt. He wanted the president of Ukraine to have his attorney general investigate Hunter Biden, and then he was going to try and tie that to Joe Biden by saying Joe Biden asked this last prosecutor to get fired because he didn't want him investigating his son. So again, for Donald Trump, who he and his family are accused of stealing hundreds of millions, even if that's the case that Hunter Biden was doing something shady, he was making $600,000 a year. That in the grand scheme of things, $600,000 a year in the grand scheme of things is not a lot of money. If you're trying to leverage your relationship as the president, as the son of a president or a vice president, if you're gonna do something, I would, you're gonna go for more than $600,000. That's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things.
but he probably heard a rumor that it happened and said, "Oh, I have the perfect opportunity now with Ukraine to just
Yeah, there's a
get a
new
little."
president in there, and he wanted to take advantage of the fact that there's a new president in there who needed our help. So he was using that for his personal gain. That's what makes it illegal.
So we were asked to talk about, and I'd love to have your opinion on the Amber Geiger trial. And just a quick update. She's the former police officer, Dallas police officer, who shot and killed her neighbor, Botham John, a year ago as he sat in his living room eating a bowl of ice cream. And she said that she went to the wrong apartment, and she told him to put his hands up, show his hands. He didn't show his hands. She shot him. She felt he was in her apartment, and that trial is underway. She went on the stand to defend herself last week, or Thursday or Friday.
Correct.
And so, love to get your opinion on this trial and her testimony as well.
Let me say this first and foremost. We trust the people who are police officers, we trust them to have a higher level of attention to detail than the average person, because we give them the ability, we sanction them, and we immunize them against arresting people and detaining people and shooting people and transporting people. I mean, we give our police officers a huge amount of privilege to conduct their job,
Even off duty.
even off duty, even off duty. But one of the but one of, like I said, but I specifically use that phrase as it's germane to the story. We assume that the average police officer has a higher amount of attention to detail than the average person. If you sit 10 people in front of a car accident and you question 10 people, you'll get 10 different versions of the story, just because people have people perception colors how you see something. That said, if we can't trust the attention to detail of a police officer to not go to the wrong floor in the apartment the apartment building that you live in, and go to a different floor to a different apartment and see somebody in the apartment, and you don't stop long enough to think, wait,
And all the clues that could have alerted you along, details that could have alerted you along the way that something is off.
so you're on the wrong floor. You didn't notice, okay, because I think I don't remember the specifics, but let's say Botham John was on the fourth floor, because I think he lived one floor
Above her, right? Or below.
above her, correct. So she lives at her apartment is 303. He's at 403. So she didn't notice that she walked up one additional flight of stairs, or that the elevator went up one more floor. She didn't notice that there was an incorrect apartment number on the door to her apartment. She didn't notice that hey, I never leave my door unlocked. Why is my door
And my
unlocked?
key isn't fitting into the.
Then you push the door open and you don't notice, somebody put different furniture in my apartment while I was going to my shift today.
Even the smell of someone's home is different
Right.
when you go in someone's home
I'm
that's
sure
not
Botham
yours.
John, again, he's I think he's Jamaican. So again, but again, so there were all of these clues before she got to the point where she physically walked into the wrong apartment, saw a black guy in there, told him to put his hands up, and then the black guy is sitting there saying, hey, why are you in my apartment? And while he's sitting there trying to figure out what's going on, she shoots him. And her defense is she went to the wrong apartment. Just think about that for a second. Now, one time in my life, I will admit this, one time in my life, I was, and this is about maybe 15 years ago. I was out drinking with some people after work, and I got a little bit more. I was inebriated, so I went out to get something from my car, and there was somebody who had the exact same car, the exact same color as my car. It was like an Acura TL. It was silver with the black interior. So I go up to the car, I open the door, and the door was unlocked. But then when I got in the car, I went to turn the ignition on, and it wouldn't turn. So I tried it a couple of times. I was drunk enough that I was sober enough that I was like, why is my key not working? But then I said to myself, oh, okay, let me just sit here because I'm too drunk to drive anyway. And then somebody came out and said, hey, why are you in my car? And I was like, oh, I thought this was my car because we had the exact same car. Now, again, I was drunk, went outside, went to the wrong car. Now, was this woman drunk and she went to the wrong apartment?
And
Was
she's
she
not
under
saying she was.
was she under the influence and she went to the wrong apartment or whatever? That would explain how it happened, but that wouldn't remove her culpability. If you were drunk off duty and you walked to the wrong apartment as a police officer and you shoot and kill somebody, you're still guilty of murder.
And it's interesting that she's not using that as a defense whatsoever. And as well as detail, another detail they mentioned is that he had a mat in front of his home.
Mhm.
And hers does not have a mat. So when you
Attention to
stand
detail.
on when you stand on something that you're not used to standing on in this spot,
Attention to detail.
and I've also had this happened just 2 weeks ago where I hit my alarm on my car. I heard the beep beep. I get up to the car, what I think is my car, and one car over is my car, but this one is the same make, model, color.
Mhm.
I open the door. It happens to be unlocked, which I just hit the remote.
Mhm.
So I'm expecting the door to be unlocked when I walk up to it.
Mhm.
I open it and there's a car seat.
Okay.
And I'm like, whoa, whoa, close the door. That's not my car. I don't
Okay.
have a car seat.
Car seats frighten Wanda, just so everybody knows.
Absolutely. I'm like, babies. I don't have no babies. Lord, woo, woo, woo. So I was barely paying it, but if you notice something that's not normally.
I'll give you something. I'll give you a really, really real world example. Do this when you get home. Anybody listening, do this. Wherever you're standing in your house, close your eyes and walk from one room to the next. Most people can do that because you know where everything is in your house. If you're not one of those people that you constantly rearranging furniture or whatever, but I could walk into the front door of my home, close my eyes, and walk reasonably make it all the way upstairs to my bedroom because I know the layout of my house. So again, if you could just think about that, if you could close your eyes and navigate throughout your house and you won't trip and fall over something, how did this a police officer who again is supposed to have a higher degree of attention to detail go to the wrong floor to the wrong numbered apartment with a mat in front of it with different furniture, see someone sitting in her home, not lurking in the dark going through drawers, sitting there with a bowl of ice cream, and your response was put your hands up, and then shoot them and kill them. At no point did you stop and say, why are you in my house eating ice cream? And so the person could say, what are you talking about? I'm in my house. No, I'm not. I'm in apartment 303. And you say, no, you're in apartment 403. Oh, I came to the wrong floor. Now, if that had happened and he had called the police and said this police officer just illegally came into my apartment, that would be one thing. But you murder this person because you think they're in your home and all they were doing was eating. You shot that person for theft of dairy. you know, and again, that's the bad thing about that's the thing that we need to reevaluate in our police system in this country, because police officers oftentimes have the ability to be judge, jury, and executioner, and then we have to go through this protracted process to get any type of justice. We need to reevaluate that as a society, because we have so many people within the police system, uh, within our law enforcement system, that can't be trusted.
So Tucson said, "Man, the conversation we are having is proof of the power of white supremacy. If this was a sister, this would be cut and dry. Period." And even her white privilege comment to me that when I listened to her give her testimony, and she said, "I told him to raise his hands, or let me see your hands, show me your hands." Why her thing that it was almost as if she was saying he didn't show me his hands, like that's why I killed him. He had he didn't follow my rules to show me his hands, so of course he had to face the penalty. I mean, of course the consequence of that, of him not showing. And he's in his own home. Does he have to answer to you?
The question, I mean, again, that's a difficult question to navigate. I would certainly agree that it was white privilege coupled with that feeling of entitlement of
So
being a
yes,
law
that's
enforcement
true.
officer. If she was in her if she was in her uniform and this was something that happened on the street and blah blah blah, and that happened. I mean, if this exact same thing happened on the street, if a police officer walks up to somebody and says, "Put your hands up," and you got a bowl of ice cream in your hand, you say, "What are you talking about?" and they shoot you and kill you, they wouldn't be able to get away with that. So presumably they wouldn't be able to get away with that.
Well,
I didn't know what
depends
he
on
was
the
going.
color you
I
are.
didn't know what he was going to do with that spoon.
I felt threatened.
Right. I feared for my life. I'm
Fear
lactose
for my life.
intolerant. so, uh, so again, I, some of this is white supremacy or that white entitlement, white privilege. Some of this is what goes with, being a law enforcement
Above the
officer.
law type.
Correct.
The
Correct. But again, this is. I wonder what would have happened. I wonder what would have happened if Botham Jean, if he had had a firearm in his home
I
and he shot and
know
killed her.
he would be in jail right now.
I
She
don't. I
walks
don't know.
free.
I don't know. I don't
You
know.
don't think so?
I don't know. I don't know.
He would be free.
I don't know if he if she walked into his if she walked in as an off-duty police officer plain clothes into his apartment and he in the course of defending himself shot and killed her and she was in his apartment. I don't know what grounds they would have. I mean that I guess what I'm saying is that we need to have a conversation as African Americans about self-defense.
He would be if he shot her because he felt threatened. You just burst into my home. I see you have a gun on your hip, and they would have handled it so different. I watched her walk out of the courtroom and go home. He would still be behind bars, I feel.
I don't know if again if someone walk in most states you have the right to defend yourself in your home. I don't know of any. I mean, most states have stand your ground laws.
But when you're black and the person you're standing your ground with is white, is that different than a black on black
I
standing
don't
your ground?
I don't know of any case of a. And again, if anybody out there who's listening knows of a story, please feel free to correct me. But I don't know of any case of a home invasion or a invasion being committed by a white person into a black person's home where the black person shot and killed and or defended themselves and they were arrested in their home. I don't know of any. So I mean that would be so blatantly racist if a white person breaks into my house. I'm in my house with my wife and my kids and I hear a white man in my house and I say and I shoot and kill and or shoot and hurt this white person and then they arrest me for shooting him in my home. I don't know that I've ever heard of
I
that.
think what would happen, and I want to, Son's comment goes away. I want to read this. He said, this is funny when we juxtapose it to the subjectiveness of the Trump conversation. Legal/illegal is subjective based on who committed the crime. And
well, no, I mean, I think that if we're talking about this part of if we're talking about part of the variable that with the Botham Jean case is that this woman had white privilege. It's exactly the same thing as Donald Trump. We're talking about white privilege in both cases. Just one, we're talking about a local police officer, and the other one, we're talking about a president of the United States. I think the feelings of white privilege are contiguous in both stories.
I think what would be different is they did say he was in his home smoking marijuana. They would vilify him as a person. They would turn the public opinion against him. If he shot her in his home, we would know all his backstory of everything negative that he ever did in his life. Where her, she's still, the poor police officer, poor crying.
Well, again,
Amber.
here's the third thing here's the third level of this too. We've got the white privilege. We've got her being a police officer, but here's the most dangerous thing in the world. The most dangerous thing in the world, bless you. The most dangerous thing in the world are white women's tears.
Fake ones too.
That's the most dangerous thing,
that you've made her cry.
I mean, so we have three things working in this story again, and I was just conducting a thought experiment when I said that. I know that again, if somebody breaks into your home, whatever their color is, you would be very hard pressed to be convicted if someone breaks into your home and in the case and in self-defense you assail the person or respond to the person who's breaking into your home.
That one I don't know. Tucson says 78% of black stand your ground cases lost. I think it.
Well, again,
I'm
stand your ground. Stand your ground is not home invasion. Stand your ground is you're out in public and someone accosts you and you defend yourself. So again, don't misunderstand me. I fully understand, and we talk about this all the time on our show. I fully understand that one of the biggest failings for how African Americans get justice is the jury system. It says jury of your peers. Most of the time, if you're an African American, there's majority white or white people who are on the jury, and that plays a part into it. That's why it always kills me. Like, even to this day, people joke when they refer to OJ Simpson. They say, everybody know he killed Nicole and the other guy. But when white people are in that situation, they're like, how dare you, I was found not guilty by a jury. Blah, blah, he was found not guilty. But OJ is found not guilty, but people kind of just put not guilty or acquitted in air quotes. So I'm not being dismissive of the reality that there is you have to navigate through uh, the reality of race in every stage of this system. When you get arrested, whether or not you were guilty, the handling of the evidence, the judge, the prosecutor, the jury, and if you're convicted, navigating your way through being incarcerated, and then post incarceration and trying to be reactive. So again, I'm not being dismissive of that at all. I'm just saying that it would be very difficult to, if someone broke into my home and in the course of me defending myself and my family, I shot and killed the intruder.
make the intruder a white woman. You're going to.
It'd be very difficult.
I think what would happen is, just like Amber, there are variances of how much time she could get, or whether she's charged with manslaughter versus murder and all that. If it were a black man, it would be he would get a higher
Agreed.
charge than what this woman is going to get, a slap on
Agreed.
the wrist and go home and poor you, and next time
I,
pay more
I,
attention.
I again, I agree that there is bias within the legal system, which again, that does not negate the fact that African Americans, we need to arm ourselves in higher percentages. If Botham, I would rather, I go back to Ice Cube. I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. If Botham John had a firearm and he was able to defend himself, and if he had been able to stop her from killing him, he'd be on trial, but he'd still be here. We have to make up our minds as a community. If we already know that the legal system is biased against us. That said, we have a choice. Botham John might have been that cat that said, "Oh, I don't believe in guns, and I think guns are dangerous, and I trust the police." And then he winds up. Not saying that that's the case. I don't know, but there are a lot of I know, and this is anecdotal, but I know a lot of minorities who don't like guns, don't want to own a gun. I don't, I trust the police, and I always have conversations with them like that's the most idiotic, thing that I could, Joe, you trust the
Trust the
police.
police is idiotic. But I am one of those people that are a little bit fearful of, if I like, that I would pull out the gun and they wind up grabbing it from me because I'm like sitting there shaking and they taking, next thing you know, I'm shot with my own gun. But I grew up with a gun toting woman. My mom was from Mississippi, and she had a cute little thing that she kept with her at all times in her purse.
You
Wait,
described your mother's self-defense as cute.
it was cute. She had a cute little
gun.
a cute little gun that she kept with her, but I was scared because she
She
got
had
a
a little
temper.
furry little handle on it, and the little hammer was all cute.
It was a cute gun, but she also was not afraid to use it on you. You could step on a lawn, and I thought she may shoot you. So
Look, I mean, but again, that's the conversation we need to have as a community. When you got people out here that's got AK-47s and AR-15s, and they're buying thousands of rounds of ammunition, and all it takes is for them to wake up on the wrong side of the bed, and you go on about your business. Whenever one of these mass shootings happen, it's never it's very seldom ever this guy was going after this person, and then in the heat of rage they no, it's just this person just got their gun, just drove around randomly, stopped somewhere, and then just started shooting random people. I think we need to we need, I mean, since we can't get Congress to be serious about gun control, we need to have a conversation in our community about self-defense.
Uh, so I want to ask you a question about that really quickly, and us in self-defense. But I want to bring in some of the comments from Facebook. You've been listening to He Said, She Said on IntellectualRadio.com, and we've been talking about a couple topics. We've been talking about the impeachment and the Amber Geiger trial for her murdering Botham Jean in Dallas. So he says, and they made a Toussaint said, and they made OJ's oops, I almost said that out loud, behind guilty in the court of public opinion until life got hard enough for them to convict him of something. Which I thought of that case when we were talking about Trump. That you think of something, if you find something you can bring him a charges on, you're going to roll with that to get him any way you can.
OJ was done. If OJ had gone somewhere and sat down, then public accord again. The being convicted in the court of public opinion,
you're still free. and he still had our backing. Of our people still were like, we know you did it, but we kind of
but I understand.
But I understand. We get it. So for he also said the sickness is the American political system in Trump's case, or judicial system in Geiger case. The sickness is our benevolence to them. They work how they were designed.
I would extrapolate that statement in Trump's case to say a lot of people accuse Trump of being racist, and I don't know if he's racist, or because he was born in the upper class, and because he has been surrounded by rich people his entire life. Even now as president, most of his cabinet are millionaires and billionaires. Those are the people he surrounds himself with. I don't know if he's racist, or if he's just so far removed from what the average person experiences that he can't relate. And I don't know which one is worse. Whenever you hear Republicans talking about, oh, we need a business person in charge of the government, and we need to run the government like a business. No, that's exactly what you don't need. A bit, But that aside, that's an interesting point, because I've often thought to myself, is Trump racist, or is he just so far removed from the average person's experience that he has no frame of reference? And he was talking the other day, and he was saying, hey, everybody's rich and everybody's doing well, and he always talks about the stock market as being a metric of how the overall economy is doing. But we know that 60% of Americans don't even have an investment in stock market in terms of a 401k. Most people, there's a disproportionately large number of people who are in their 50s, who, I think I read something the other day that said something like 25 to 33% of people in their 50s have $0 saved for retirement. It's a lot of people out here just waiting on their Social Security check.
Right.
So that's that's an interesting distinction. It perhaps gives you a window into how to perhaps approach trying to negotiate with Trump. But I think it's just a distinction without a difference in terms of him, because he's going to be gone soon anyway.
I think he's both racist and
he could be both.
I think
he could be both. He could be both. But again, even if he is racist, is he racist because of his experience or his ignorance? Racism
is ignorance, though, isn't it?
It's ignorance. It's not. But here's the distinction that I'm making: does he have the opinions that he has of black people because he's had some poor experiences with black people, so he's just extrapolated that to all black people, or has he come in contact with so few black people in his life
that he's going by what the media tells him of black people?
Right. I mean, I've met people I've met people that, or I know people who, they lived the first 18, 20 years of their lives in some little small town in somewhere, America, where they didn't know any black people.
But they were open to meeting them and learning that they're not that way, and Trump
Some of
isn't.
them were. Some of them
Some
were.
are, some are,
Some
some
are.
are not. They
But
truly believe what they believe, and
right.
that
What I'm saying is that when you go the first 20 years of your life, and you don't meet a person of another race until you go away to college, or until you get your first professional job, or whatever. And some just because you didn't meet a black person for the first 20 years of your life, you still knew black people existed. So whatever medium that you were introduced to black culture, whether it's television or the internet or whatever, that was all the information that you had about that group of people until you actually met them. So I just, again, it's just
well,
it's
that's true. I mean, that honestly could be. It's just pure ignorance. He's had very limited experiences with them. The few he knows are usually celebrities,
exactly.
and I like those. So therefore, he feels I'm not racist because
Exactly.
I like Jay-Z. I like I don't know. I'm throwing out Steve Harvey. So that's my friend. So and
He's the worst.
so you go, okay, I'm not
No,
racist
but
because I have black friends. So
exactly.
I do get that. So Toussaint had well, he I'll make one comment he made. Are you still free as a public person once you're convicted in a court of public opinion? Yeah,
Yeah, you
you
are.
free.
Yeah, yeah,
You get to roam the earth.
yeah.
You're not in a jail cell. I mean, yes, you may not be free mentally and not able to do some of the things, but you still have you. There's a price
Hey,
to
if
pay
you
for sunshine
if
and
you guilty in the court of public opinion, you still can do whatever it is you want to do. You just might not be able to do.
something
You might not be able to do some things in some places,
in some places.
but you
R. Kelly, but guilty in the public opinion, but he still just has just as big of a fan base somewhere.
exactly.
So
Exactly. Everything that I've read about R. Kelly in jail is that when now that he's in jail, like he's treated like a rock star. I mean, I guess that's stupid because he is a rock star, but but he's highly revered, in jail. I guess because they figure, when they were out, they would listen to his music. I guess, or they listen to it in jail. But again, being convicted in the court of public opinion. I mean, as African Americans, we could say that the perception of us is based on group think of people outside of our community. If somebody comes up to you and calls you the N word, or if somebody makes an assumption about you just because they see you and you're black, you're being convicted in the court of public opinion. But that doesn't mean that you still can't go where you want to go and eat where you want to eat and live where you want to live and whatever.
I think it also still doesn't mean that that person has a conscience. For it to hold you hostage or not make you actually be free is sometimes your own guilt or your. Some of these people don't have any of that, and I think OJ is one of those that still feels he's the same OJ before as he was today, and I don't think he's walking around feeling anything. So Toussaint asked a question. He said, outside of rhetoric per the black community, has Trump been any less harmful than the Obama presidency?
I'm going to assume he's trying to be a contrarian, or he's just trying to like just take the conversation to the next level or something. Donald Trump is objectively the worst president in the history of the United States by any metric. Whether you're talking about the economy, whether you're talking about foreign policy, whether you're talking about just humanity, whether you're talking about, I mean, I can't think of any good thing that he has done, and any benefits that have been realized within the stock market have been short term, and have done and have been tactical, and in the long term they're going to be disadvantageous. The stock market going up. I remember when he first became president, right before he got inaugurated. I remember that at a company that I used to work for, they brought everybody together at home office, and they were talking about Donald Trump is about to invest trillions of dollars into infrastructure, and they got everybody together from all these different departments, So we could talk about all these different projects across the United States that hadn't started yet, but they flew everybody in all over the country to have the conversation about all these projects because Donald Trump said he was going to allocate all this money into for infrastructure. And again, people who don't, people who I think people who have a very limited and rudimentary and primary and very elementary understanding of the government would think that, but I was the only one sitting there saying to myself, I never said it out loud, but I was sitting there thinking to myself, Donald Trump can't allocate any money for the infrastructure. Congress has to do that. So Donald Trump can say whatever he wants to say, but if Congress doesn't allocate the money, it's not going to happen. And guess what? It hasn't happened. So no, I don't see any good thing that Donald Trump has done for the United States.
But I think he's saying, is it any? You could also say that Obama didn't do anything good, and he's saying for the black community. So I think he's more saying it.
Well, again,
as,
when black people say what did President Obama do for the black community? Again, that speaks to me that speaks from a place of a little bit of ignorance. You can't pass a law that says all black people, we're gonna do X for all black people. Even when you look at the 13th, 14th, and 15th amendments that were the amendments that were around the abolition of slavery, those laws didn't make any reference to black people. The 13th Amendment says that you cannot be forced into servitude unless you're convicted of a crime. The 14th Amendment, I think, is the one that says that if you are born in the United States, that you are automatically a citizen. But those laws didn't say for black people X.
But also, though, you can create a law that it will more greatly impact black people,
right,
the most, based on
and Obama did that. The Affordable Care Act. There are a lot more people who have health insurance as a result of the Affordable Care Act before he became president. I would say if you're going to compare Donald Trump and President Obama, I would say that Donald Trump has contributed greatly to the coarsening of the American discourse and causing us to be more confrontational and more tribal in our society. I think that President Obama healed a lot of that, and the only examples that you can bring of that you can kind of illustrate that would not support that thesis are because people who were racist and didn't appreciate having a black person in the White House. There are a lot of tangible and intangible things that Obama did, but we have to also remember when President Obama became president, he had control of the House and he had 60 votes in the Senate. So he had a filibuster-proof Senate. 9 months into his presidency, Ted Kennedy died in Massachusetts, and then had a special election, and they replaced Democratic Ted Kennedy with Republican Steve Brown. So now, from the moment that Steve Brown was elected and put into office in January 2010, the Democrat, now that 41 vote minority of Republicans in the Senate, filibustered every single law that President Obama tried to implement. So again, we have to be careful that we keep the chronology of what happened and how those things, how the intersectionality of those things and how they impact, number one, what Obama wanted to do and how they impact us individually and collectively as a community.
So I don't know. I guess I'll bring this up to science. He said you don't have to assume. He was fairly direct with his question. I don't remember what you said exactly about his other question, and he feels like you're misinformed on this topic of what Obama did versus what Trump. I think he left the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like he thinks, and this is my opinion of what he thinks,
Mm-hmm.
that Trump has done nothing any worse or better than Obama, but we say that he's the worst president.
Okay. I mean, again, some of what we're talking about is opinion, and some of what we're talking about is fact. If you think that the fact that if you think that when President Obama came into office, the Dow was at 8,000. When he left office, the Dow was at like 19,000, somewhere around there. So the stock market went up 100% during
Wow.
the time that he was in office. When Trump came into office, the Dow was at around 19,000 on the day of his inauguration, and today the Dow is at 24,000. So the Dow went up about 5,000 points, or about 25%. So objectively, if you want to use the stock market as a metric to say which president did better, during Obama, the Dow went up 100%. During Trump, it's gone up 20%. Obama did better. During the time that Obama was president, you had more people who were insured, and Donald Trump is trying to get rid of the coverage of the Affordable Care Act and pre-existing conditions. And so objectively, if you're looking at healthcare, Obama was better. If you're looking at just the coarsening of the dialogue and how confrontational people are, it's markedly worse today. Hate crimes and crimes against the LBGT community and against Jews have gone up exponentially since Trump has been elected, as opposed to when Obama was elected. If you look at the foreign affairs, again, I'm not giving my opinion. I'm giving what are backed up by numbers, and it sounds like Toussaint is one of those people that Toussaint has his opinion about what Obama did and what Trump has done, and he's one of those people that say, "Oh, both sides are bad," and everybody does, and I don't subscribe to that opinion.
And there's that. So, you've been tuning to He Said, She Said on intellectualradio.com. I've been very excited to have He Said, She Says personal political analyst in the building to give us the facts as well as what's been happening, giving us an explanation of what's been going on in the news and the political field. So, one thing I know I wanted to touch on while I have you here, because it's hard to get David. So when I get him, I want to just everything I can think of. The election. So we've had some. So Biden seemed he was rising, and then he started falling, and then I don't even know what happened to my boy. Um, oh goodness, what is
Bernie Sanders.
just kind of Kamala went up and then down, and Corey has been kind of quiet, and Buttigieg, he was running strong, and I'm only going by what I hear, and I don't like, I'm not saying that I've gone and fact checked what they're actually doing and saying. I'm going by the surface pure surface of what I see in the media. So I'm sure that this is not educated. This is what they want me to see. So I understand that, but that's what I'm going by. And some people have exited the race. Kamala has kind of, and now Elizabeth, it sounds like, is rising.
She's ahead of she's ahead of Biden in Iowa, New Hampshire, and California by 2 or 3 points.
So I want to get your take on the race, how you feel. While we were talking about Trump, will this affect the race at all? So I'd like to get your opinion on where we stand right now today in the election.
My opinion, and I've been saying this from the very beginning, I think that the dream ticket would be Biden and Harris, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Now, you haven't been a Kamala fan.
I was not a Kamala fan per se, but given where we are today, and just listening to her more and watching her on the trail and following her senatorial career, I believe that Joe Biden as president and Kamala Harris as vice president would be the campaign that would have the broadest reaching appeal in terms of getting young people, minorities, kind of centrist white votes. I think that particular ticket would definitely beat Trump.
When you say getting young people, and I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, but there's one person who is running who likes to almost bring out or point out any time where Biden seems to have that senior moment, and he wants.
You're talking about Joaquin, what's his name? I can't think of his name. He used to be the mayor of San Antonio.
And so, does Biden have an influence on young people?
He wouldn't know. Kamala Harris would be the part of the ticket who would be getting the young people. Because again, I think that I think we're past the point where we're going to have it where an all white old male ticket is going to win.
Really?
You're going to have a person of color or a woman on a ticket to get the widest range of voters to come out and support your candidacy. That's why you're hearing whispers even on the Republican side that Trump might kick Mike Pence to the curb and pick up what's her name from who used to be the governor of South Carolina, and then she went to the UN and then she resigned.
I know who you're talking about. Let's
Yeah,
see.
I can't call her name off the top of my head. She has an American first name, like all
Right.
of them do. But the former governor of South Carolina.
Did she give the speech? Wait, we will hopefully Google will be our friend and come up with it.
Just put in former female Republican governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley. Nikki
Okay.
Haley. That's who it
That's
is.
what I was thinking.
That said, on the Democratic side, Cory Booker needs to go ahead and shut it down. He hasn't broken 2%, and if he doesn't break, he's trying to do some fundraising, hit some fundraising metrics so that he can participate in the next debate in October. He needs to shut it down. Going back to the Senate. Buttigieg, again, as progressive as we pretend that we are,
We're not ready for that.
We're not ready for a gay man and a gay man who's one heartbeat away from being the president, having a married gay man being, either president or vice president. So he's that's not going to happen. Amy Klobuchar, she needs to go ahead and fade to black. She's not going back to Minnesota and be that senatorial, hold that Senate seat down, that Senate vote that we need there. Who else?
So
Andrew Yang, he's the Asian candidate that's never been a politician, talking about giving everybody $1,000 a month and taking the money from Google and Apple and all those companies to fund it. We're not going to do that. So he needs to go somewhere and sit down.
John Delaney.
John Delaney, no, he needs to. No.
It seems like I'm looking at who has the most money. It says here he has more money than Kamala.
Yeah. But did you know who John Delaney was until you Googled?
I don't know who he is today.
Exactly.
I didn't even know he was in it until I pulled this up, and so I'm going to say no amount of money made me know who he is.
John
Who
Delaney,
is he?
Some rich guy that
Oh, okay. So he's not in political office currently.
He's the other guy that's been running on impeaching Donald Trump, and he's a billionaire. I think he's from Illinois.
Okay.
His last name is Stern. I can't call his first name. But he hasn't been able to get into the debate. So, he needs. Again, we're at the point now where we just need to concentrate on the top 5.
Joe Walsh.
Joe Walsh is trying to run for the Republican nomination.
$0.
No, he's trying to run against Trump on the Republican side.
He has had no money. They say.
No.
So
we've got the top 5, which are Biden, Sanders, Warren, Kamala, and
Buttigieg, money wise.
Is it Buttigieg?
At least by this is raised as of June 30th, and this is from the Citizens Count. So I don't know if my source is
sure. Bernie Sanders needs to go ahead and hang it up.
Really?
Yes, he does. He needs to go ahead and hang it up. He had cornered the space on the left of being the most progressive person who had the most well thought out democratic socialist agenda that would impact the largest number of people. And Elizabeth Warren has co-opted and taken his vote. She leapfrogged him, and she's leapfrogged Joe Biden in a couple of places. And I think a lot of that has to do with just because people are to some degree superficial, but I think a lot of that just has to do with Elizabeth Warren looks younger. She's the same. She's in her 70s, like Biden and Sanders, but she looks younger. She doesn't look like she's in her 70s. She's a little bit more spry. She's a little bit more. She's
funky.
Right. She responds a little bit. She seems a little sharper. She doesn't seem like she's being impacted by her age or being in her 70s. So I would definitely say, but there, the big corporate donators on the Democratic side have already come out and said that if Elizabeth Warren gets the nomination, that they're going to withdraw their give it to Trump because
Wow.
she's come out and she said, hey, wealth. I mean, she's talking about wealth taxes. She's talking about remaking a lot of the things that we kind of just take for granted, the trickle down economics and the tax cuts and a lot of the things that the business community likes. She's talking about dismantling all of that. That said, going back to my original point, so what? Unless she gets 60 Democratic senators and 218 people in the House, she can say she wants to do whatever she wants to do without that supporting cast in Congress. It's not going to pass.
Do you
So
think reparations will play a part in this whole?
no,
No.
no, no. We need to we need to probably just move on from that. Um,
I was waiting on my check.
yeah, we probably there are other things that if we wanted. I'm not a fan of writing a check to
Right wrongs or
I'm not a fan of writing a check because, and this is the main reason, within the African American community as compared to other communities, dollars stay in our communities the shortest period of time. Like if you look at Jewish communities, dollars change hands 7 times. You go to the Italian community, dollars change hands 5 or 6 times. Asian community, you can look at various communities and you can track how wealth circulates within that community. Within the African American community, dollars stay in our hands like 1 or 2 times. So if you wrote a check to a bunch of people, those same people would be poor again within a very short period of time. I think that if we wanted to do something for reparations that would have long-term strategic effects and would raise the African American experience or the average experience, I think saying for the next 25 years that any African American who wants to go to college, trade school, or junior college can go for free, or getting 0%, student loans that will sunset after a certain amount of time. If you go borrow $50,000 to go get this degree, and then if you haven't been able to pay that money back within 20 years, then the loan is forgiven.
I like that.
Give
David Stephen for president.
guaranteed business loans within communities, things like that. We're both here in Chicago. When you go into the poorest parts of our community in the West Side, every store is owned by somebody outside of our community. So business loan. There are other things that we could do that would impact us and positively for the long term. But again, and you got to keep in mind, like, what dollar amount is fair. When the Asians were held in internment camps during World War II, there were 100,000 Asians that were put into those internment camps, and I think each Asian received, it was like 12 to 15. So the total amount of money that was spent was $3 billion. Okay, there are 40 million African Americans in this country. Is $10,000 fair for the scourge of slavery? I don't think so. Would $100,000 be fair? Probably not. So once you finally get to a dollar amount that's fair, which you're probably talking about maybe $1 million per person, maybe. Let's say okay, reparations is going to be $1 million. There's 40 million of us in this country. So 40 million times $1 million, you're talking about $4 trillion. Is the United States going to go in debt $4 trillion for reparations to fairly compensate every African American for the scourge of slavery? No, they're not. And anything, like I said, and if they sent everybody like a $10,000 check, that would be insulting. So again,
Right.
I think we need to look at something that's going to have a long-term investment in our community rather than just sending a check.
John said Elizabeth Warren is set to win the nomination. She has the base and the money and the organization to win. She has the research and the policies. Yeah,
She's only leading in 3 states, and she's leading in those 3 states according to one or two polls. So again, Iowa and New Hampshire are the first two primary states. California has moved up, so it's going to be on Super Tuesday, and she's leading in that state. So again, yes, she is leading in 3 states in two polls. Uh, that's a huge accomplishment for her, because you need only go back a few months ago, and it was Biden, Bernie, um and Elizabeth Warren was anywhere between number 3 and number 5 just a couple of months ago. So for her to be number one in those 3 states is laudable. That said, her plans that she has are only as good as the supporting cast she's going to have in Congress. So unless we are going to indoctrinate our voters and tell them, if you vote for Elizabeth Warren, you have to vote for whoever the Democratic candidate who's running for Congress where you live, and you have to vote for that Democratic senator. We have to do that in mass so that we can get the 60 vote filibuster proof majority in the Senate and the 218 plus majority that we need in the House. Unless we're going to do that all in concert, it's not going to matter who's the president.
he says Kamala is a bit too early. 8 years from today, she will be ready. If Warren wins, she will pick either Beto or somebody from Texas or the Heartland.
It's interesting. I don't know about Beto. I think Beto's run out of gas. I think Beto's time is over. I think that he was running for Senate and he came really close with Ted Cruz, but once he got on the national stage, he's been all flash, no substance. He the thing that he's gotten the most notoriety about is when he cursed about Trump being a racist and responding to journalists, and when he cursed about gun control. But other than that, he hasn't had a lot of substance behind him. I don't. I think he would be as bad a pick for VP as Tim Kaine was for Hillary Clinton.
John says all she needs is to win Iowa and she has a springboard. She will win New Hampshire, and if she does, she will beat Biden in South Carolina.
That's the conventional wisdom. He is correct that that's what happened when Obama was running. That nobody had heard of him. He was a state senator. Nobody took him seriously. A couple of weeks before within a couple of weeks of the Iowa primary, Hillary Clinton was still beating him. But Iowa is a caucus state, so when you get down on the floor and you go over here and say, who you voting for? I'm going to vote for this person, and you say, well, come over here and talk to us, and they kind of bounce around and have these kind of fluid dynamic conversations, and then at the end of the night you might have changed your vote 2 or 3 different times. And then Obama won Iowa, and that was the springboard that gave him the momentum to think, wow, he might be a real contender against Hillary Clinton. And then we know what happened. So he is right. The conventional wisdom says that if you win Iowa and New Hampshire, then you go to South Carolina, and South Carolina, for the most part, will follow the momentum they see coming out of Iowa and New Hampshire. Because California is now a Super Tuesday state in March, uh, it'll be interesting to see who California picks between Biden and Elizabeth Warren. And I think it'll be a historical irony, like I said earlier, if Trump winds up getting impeached trying to get Oppo research from Ukraine on Biden, and then Elizabeth Warren, who he teased for calling her Pocahontas, winds up being the Democratic nominee and wins. That'll be something that'll be talked about, in history like forever. So,
do you think Warren can beat Trump?
I don't know. She can beat him in a debate. Elizabeth Warren has some very progressive ideas that she will be able to articulate, but Trump did not win based on people are not made presidents based on an esoteric cerebral decision. And that's
He didn't win the popular vote.
correct. but my point is that if Donald Trump gets impeached and he goes back to that old playbook,
He'll win.
then no, if he goes back to
No,
the old playbook, he'll lose. I
really?
think I think that I think his act has gotten kind of old. I think people are
With
tired of it.
his supporters?
No, not with his supporters. Remember, Trump won because about 100,000 people in 3 different states voted for him, so that he won the electoral college. Like you just said, he won the popular vote. So I think that small sliver of people in the
Ah,
middle have already left. They
they
were,
jumped off the fence and hopped
yeah,
on the other side already.
exactly. I don't. There would, it would, the Democratic side would really have to implode between now and next November for Trump to get a second term, especially since he's going to be impeached.
Do you think he's going to be impeached?
He's Yes, they're going to impeach him.
Okay, you heard it here first. I'm going to end on that. I'm going to drop the mic on that one. You've been listening to He Said, She Said on intellectualradio.com. I've been just been a fun hour, 2 hours of talking politics with David. David, how can people reach you if they'd like to reach you
Follow me on
about anything?
Twitter, David A. Seaton on Twitter. I'm always having conversations there. Our radio show is kind of ad hoc right now. We've had some recent appearances on WVON, so um, we're investigating, seeing if that's going to be a regular thing. But follow Atiba Buchanan at Humanity in the Headlines. You can follow me on Twitter at David A. Seaton, and we will definitely always be a friend here at Intellect.
Absolutely. And I definitely will have you back when time permits so you can come in and chime in and keep us abreast of this election as it happens and anything else that's happening in the political world. Or
Happy
if
to
he
do it.
actually gets impeached, I'm going to definitely
Happy
have
to
you
do
back
it.
on that
Remember,
one.
you heard it here first.
You,
Donald Trump will be impeached.
you heard it here first. You've been tuned in to He Said, She Said on Intellectual Radio. And I am so thankful for everybody who chimes in, tunes in. Thank you, the people on Facebook, John, Toussaint, who all become another co-host out there. My Facebook co-host, I appreciate you so much. And everybody listens on all the ways you can listen to intellectualradio.com. I also want you to check out Cheryl Underwood. We have a new addition to the Intellectual Radio family. So if you want to hear some new and exciting shows, I'd love for you to check out her show. And we have another new show coming up after me today, Overcoming Obstacles with Jada Tennille James. And you have to check her out here on intellectualradio.com and come back and see me next week, the same time, same place, here on intellectualradio.com.